And then here's my question as we go out. Are we not raised already? Isaiah 25:8, Isaiah 26:19. I believe in going to heaven. Like I'm going to die and I'm going to go to heaven. What I don't believe in is living my life wondering if I'm going to make it. Y'all, do you see the heading? Why is it false? Why is too much grace called false doctrine, but then teaching next to no grace is somehow acceptable? Keith Mosher, for generations, I'm saying since 1992, has been teaching people next to no grace. And no one bats an eye. Are you ready for this? This is what, 2018?
Perfectly designed to point out how sinful sin is. Because in keeping the law of Moses, and men did keep the law of Moses, Luke 1:6, Zechariah and Elizabeth walked in all the commandments of the Lord blameless. Men did keep the law of Moses, but that holy law could not take away or remit or justify a man from his sins.
Did you hear Keith Mosher just say people kept the law of Moses? Look at John 7. Jesus said, "Did not Moses give you the law, and none of you keep the law?" This man taught my dad, he taught my brother, and he taught me, and he is teaching incorrectly. And we got all these young men who come out bound, I'm saying pressed down from Brotherhood politics. And not only are they pressed down from Brotherhood politics, that the Memphis School of Preaching can blackball you whenever they want to. That Memphis School of Preaching just goes over to Freed Hardeman, who has 4 Pepperdine speakers, and if you say anything, we'll blackball you. And then new schools rise up and they connect to basically have, power brokeraging with other schools, Texas School of Preaching and B.J. Clark getting in bed together. What they're making is this conglomeration where all these schools can put their thumbs on the preachers in the local congregations. And not only are they doing that, but then in the classroom you have Keith Mosher saying, you can keep the law. Do you know what that does? That makes these young men, they said, well, Brother Mosher said I can keep the law. Well, Jesus said none of you do it. Paul said, no man is justified by the works of the law. Paul said in Romans chapter 2, you're inexcusable, O man, whoever you judge, for wherefore thou judgest another, you condemn yourself, for thou that judgest do the same things. How is it that he just said they're all doing something when Keith Mosher says, no, you can keep the law? It makes the young graduates anxious. Why? Because they know good and well that they got a problem. They might got 2, 3, 4 problems. They wrestle with it. And they think to themselves, I can be a better man. But Keith Mosher told me I can keep the law. That was in 2018. Here, and go back.
Zechariah and Elizabeth, the law of Moses, and men did keep the law of Moses, Luke 1:6. Zechariah and Elizabeth walked in all the commandments of the Lord blameless.
He said John's parents, Zechariah and Elizabeth, kept the law blameless. And he thinks that means perfection? 1 Timothy chapter 3. A bishop must be blameless. Y'all ever met a sinless, perfect bishop? I barely met a qualified bishop, let alone a perfect one. And this is what he's teaching to the young men. And then the young men, they go out, and they're probably not going to oppose Brother Mosher, and so they just keep spouting off the same trash. You cannot keep the law perfectly. Jesus said in John 7:19, you can't keep. He said, none of y'all keep the law. Paul says no one can be justified by law. That's in 2018. Here's 2023.
In actuality, under the law of Moses, because it's impossible that the blood of bulls and goats should take away sin. But what God was doing was, during that system, forgiving those people in prospect of the perfect sacrifice.
Keith Mosher's whole reasoning is to why people could keep the law. He said they're keeping the law. They're blameless. They keep the law of Moses. And he says, but the reason that they aren't saved that way is because the blood of bulls and goats can't take away sin. What I want you to see here is 2018, 5 years later, 2023, Keith Mosher has been teaching this since 1992. How many students have come through the Memphis School of Preaching since 1992 till now? 31 years till now, and he has been teaching this business of law keeping. Here's what Keith Mosher said in the question and answers of the 1992 Harding grad preacher forum. He says, I sense, although I am not sure because I have not talked to him personally, that there is a basic disagreement here between me and Rubel Shelley on this point. And it has to do with the law in the New Testament. I do not believe that Paul is teaching that we cannot keep any law or that men never did keep law. I hear sometimes brethren say that Jesus was the only one who kept the law of Moses perfectly. I don't know what they meant by that. He needs to stop teaching. And this was 1992 till 2020. It's not like he got better. This is not the gospel. But it implies that if a man had been perfect in his nature and had kept the law of Moses, he, by the law of Moses, could have been saved. And brethren, I want us to understand that nobody, if he had kept it perfectly, could have been saved by the law of Moses. It's impossible that the blood of bull and goat should take away sin. If you're not breaking the law, you have no sin, and then you don't need a bull or a goat. And this is called college-level teaching. From 1992 to 2023, he couldn't see this flaw. Not only has he not seen this flaw, no one has shown him this flaw. It is a political system that you are not allowed to question. And here's the statement, y'all. You basically document and you say, who are the people in the room that we're never allowed to criticize? When you see who those people are, you have spotted your oppressor. He is teaching young men to be bound up and anxious. If a Jew kept the law, he would not need the blood of bulls and goats. And this is where someone sees this quote and they recognize how bad it is. And then they say, well, I don't agree with everything that Keith Mosher teaches. Oh, really? Then why can't you say that about Rubel Shelley? You're fine with Keith Mosher teaching people works-based performance, but then you don't even read Rubel's material, and then you say, well, I got some problems with Rubel. You ought to have some problems with this, because this makes people miserable. Hello? That made me miserable. That's what I was taught at school, and it made me miserable. And it baffles me that nobody at GBN or MSOP is ever going to correct him. And why would I think that anybody at GBN is going to correct him? They don't correct anything anywhere. They go over to Freed Hardeman, they don't correct it. They got Phil Sanders on polishing the pulpit, they don't correct it. You can't count on Texas School of Preaching. Jason Rollo just says, I give full confidence to B.J. Clark while he shares the pulpit with 4 Pepperdine speakers. Nobody going to correct it. Young men just going to keep being wound up, bound up, and anxious. This is good. Let's put up 2 Bible programs. Philippians 3:5 and Romans 7. He says about himself in Philippians 3:5, Paul says, I was circumcised the 8th day of the stock of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, Hebrew of the Hebrews, as touching the law, a Pharisee, concerning persecuting the church, touching the righteousness of the law. Look what he says. Blameless. And yet, we know that Paul says in Romans 7, 8, and 9, but sin taking occasion by the commandment wrought in me all manner of concupiscence, for without the law sin was dead, for I was alive without the law once. But when the commandment came, sin revived, and I died. So blameless can't mean 100% perfected law keeping, can it? Paul says, I was blameless. And then in the same writer said in Romans 7:9, sin revived and I died. And yet, he called himself blameless. No one going to correct this stuff? If you can say it for him, well, I don't agree with everything that Keith says, well, then maybe you ought to read the 1992 Preacher Forum and not just dismiss it because it has Rubel Shelley's name on it. Because this is horrendous. It's like, you're doing it with Keith. Just do it with Rubel. You're fine with Keith because he doesn't use a piano. And I don't use a piano. But no one in the room is going to say that that's bad? Rubel did a better job in the 92 discussion than Keith did. Then just flip it around and say, but where we are today, I couldn't work and worship with Rubel because he's going to give a pass to instrumental music. Say that, fine. But you're not even doing it with him over here. You won't even correct that, and that is absolutely not the gospel. Are we not raised already?